Hello, my name is Dr. Robert Dewar. I am the cluster leader in cybersecurity here at the Geneva Centre for Security Policy. Most important action in cybersecurity at the moment in Europe would be to encourage greater dialogue between the various actors that are involved in cybersecurity, policy making, strategizing, but also in technical solution building. We're finding a lot of times that these communities that are very important to a holistic approach to cybersecurity simply aren't talking to each other, or when they are, don't really approach the problem itself in a constructive manner. So what we at the GCSP are trying to do is bring all those actors together, all those parties together, not just in Europe but around the world, to really try to establish an effective dialogue to make and to develop holistic policy solutions that involve a great deal of understanding of the practicalities and technicalities of cybersecurity. If you examine the totality of the EU's acquis in cybersecurity, if we look at the concrete actions such as devising platforms for cooperation that the EU is promoting in cybersecurity, then we can see that there's actually 5 core ideational elements that float through almost all of the EU's thinking when it comes to cybersecurity. There's a concentration on maximizing the economic opportunities that the cyber medium can provide. There's devices and platforms designed to build trust between actors, not just in terms of cybersecurity, but actors that are actively involved in the cyber medium, in commerce and in politics. There's a focus on seeking to reduce cybercrime, and the European Cybercrime Centre at Europol is highly involved in that. There's also a focus on promoting the fundamental rights that the EU promotes across the globe, and certainly within the 28 member states. And it's seeking to do these and achieve these larger conceptual goals through fostering greater cooperation, not just between the 28 member states, but also between the various actors and entities that are closely involved with cybersecurity. So the concrete actions that the EU is carrying out at the moment are geared towards achieving those 5 core goals and allowing those 5 core goals to underpin the core actions that it's trying to take. So this year, in the 2019 iteration of the Cyber Strategy Challenge, I helped to produce the scenario that the participants are working through, and I tried to create something that is both challenging and interesting and exciting for them. But I was also an observer in the 2018 iteration of the challenge, and what struck me is that in both of these iterations, the level of understanding and capability and capacity of the participants has been extraordinarily high. I don't just mean in terms of their problem-solving capacities, but also their teamworking, their capabilities when it comes to devising and developing creative solutions, their understanding of the holistic nature of the scenario that this year we've tried to create for them. This year it focuses on maritime security, or rather core components of the challenge and the scenario focus on maritime cybersecurity, but there's a much wider context. And through discussions that I've had with the various participants and some of the coaches, they really understand that cybersecurity is not just one specific thing. It doesn't focus on one specific area, but there's a much, much wider geopolitical or socioeconomic context and a much longer timescape in which these issues arise. And that knowledge and that understanding is, at this level of the game for some of these participants, is very impressive to see. They're doing very, very well, and we look forward to even more creative solutions when it comes to the final. There are 2 main problems at the moment in cybersecurity, not just in Europe but around the world. One of those is a understanding gap between those who are developing strategy and policy in cybersecurity and the technicalities of the area in which they are developing that policy and strategy. Very often we're finding that policymakers are thrust into a position where they're required to develop strategy in a field that has a very, very complex and very, very necessary and important technical aspect. the cyber medium functions in a particular technological way, and we're finding that that functionality and the understanding of that functionality is not being devolved up the way to the highest levels of policy making and strategizing, and that is becoming a problem. The second biggest problem really, or rather the second big problem, is one of a silo mentality. We're still finding that the actors who need to be most involved in that, whether from the private sector, the academic sector, policy and public bodies, as well as the military, are still functioning in their own niches and not talking with each other as much as we in our position would like them to, but also as much as they need to in order to develop the kind of solutions that really we need to develop. These solutions have to include everybody. They have to include not just the actors I've mentioned, but also civil society as well, to create truly holistic solutions to tackle the problems and threats that we're seeing in the cyber medium today.